So time for a fairly big Warhammer news roundup. Let's take a look at a leaked 40k model sprue, a huge amount of new miniature reveals, both from the day and the other settings I skimmed over on the Friday previews, this week's pre-orders, teasers of lore progression of 40k, a new Celestine statue, and more besides. Hello and welcome back to Warspecs Tactics, where today I thought we'd do a big news roundup and cover a whole bunch of topics that I don't really think needed their own video all to themselves, but I still found really quite interesting. I haven't done one of these for a few days now with all the news and things over the weekend, so I've wound up with quite a bit to catch up on in this one. First up, and in a fairly fast turnaround since the model was revealed, it looks like someone's leaked the sprue for Lord Marshal Dreir, the Deathcore special character on the Krieg steed, all shown with their model box and the sprue assembled on a cutting sheet. I'm not 100% sure as to the original source for this one, but it was posted to a fair few Discord servers last night, it did seem. Feels like the sort of thing that would have been really big news if we hadn't just had the miniature revealed. So if it was a case of Games Workshop sending out a box set early or something, I guess it either arrived at the right time, or whoever received it kept it under their hat until later. I guess it's interesting enough to see the sprues just for completeness to see what else he gets in terms of options. It does seem that the kit's really quite a straightforward and not super customizable one. Doesn't look like there's any options for building a different sort of character, and it will just be the named guy Lord Dreir out of this. I feel like it was maybe a little bit of a missed opportunity that you could have made both him and also some sort of generic Krieg character, perhaps just a regular squadron commander or similar, though I think it's cool enough either way. The main aesthetic choice that he has is whether or not you assemble him holding that sabre outstretched or have him firing with a pistol and have that sabre holstered on his hip. In any case, no real huge model reveals from that one, though it's interesting enough to see. Here's the pictures of him holding his pistol and sword arm for the two different assembly options, and he is quite a fun miniature I think, standing atop some shattered ground with some barbed wire and that minefield marker in sight. His lore is that he's the frontline Krieg commander who goes into the worst of situations along with his men, rumoured to be near unkillable. And if he loses his sinister steed, he has it repaired and given back to him, which I'm sure must happen at least fairly often in his line of work. One thing that I saw in the YouTube comments after I talked through the Krieg reveals was that people spotted that ES819 could be read in sort of calculator leet speak type thing as E's big. I feel like that's probably intentional and kind of a fun little Easter egg there. Next up, for the preview roundup I did on Friday, I decided to focus fairly fully on the miniature reveals for 40k and the Horus Heresy, though there was also a Black Library preview at the same time. I was kind of hoping that they might do one of their themed character miniature releases for that. They often tend to pair up a new character release with a book that's coming out for them. I feel like for a fair few 40k armies, that's often been a pretty interesting release. We've had things like Celestine Sacrosanct Avalyn and that Fun Orc War Boss earlier in the year. A lot of the models are quite cool ones, even if they're limited edition and gone after a bit. For the actual book reveals this time around though, there was one that does seem like it could be kind of interesting in terms of the current 40k narrative. I feel like the vast majority of 40k lore and fiction generally tends to explore sort of dark corners of the setting as opposed to driving the narrative forward and telling the ongoing current mainline story of Warhammer 40k, but it looks like we might be getting a book that actually does that. And it seems that this one is kind of the culmination novel in, I guess, the Pariah Nexus narrative from the story of 8th, 9th to 10th edition perhaps, something that we first had hinted at the end of 8th and start of 9th with the entire Indomitus release, and then they've only cycled back to that recently with the entire Abmech narrative and Vashtor turning up there as well. In any case, from the preview it looks like the book story will go beyond the current 40k lore there. The story of the Pariah Nexus so far has been that the Imperium encounters the Nexus with a fleet that goes quiet and becomes trapped in a losing battle against the Silent King's forces within the Pariah Nexus. They manage to get out a call for aid, which is answered by the Admech and Belisarius Corps, who do help a bit, but in a sort of Admech way, mainly looking out for themselves, going around harvesting a whole bunch of Blackstone to try and make their warp modulator devices. The Necrons might have wiped them out if they weren't fighting a civil war at the same time, with Imitek the Stormlord trying to battle the Silent King for supremacy. And then in the most recent update to the entire thing, Vashtor the Archifane has shown up with his tunneling Forge World of Wormwood, I guess presumably after whatever super weapon it was he was seeking in the Arcs of Omen series, and begins trying to flip the Blackstone pylons to make the Nexus more about chaos. Apparently Guilliman is on the route to the Nexus to try and sort things out. And it'll be interesting to see Guilliman and the Silent King go head to head in some faction, whether it's strategy or hand-to-hand combat. In any case, certainly has some big capacity for impacting the core 40k lore with a whole bunch of big players in that area. Will be cool to see how that narrative either continues or concludes. I'll hopefully aim to cover a few events from that one on the channel, as I find it kind of interesting to see where the 40k narrative goes. As well as that, there were a couple of other Black Library reveals for 40k as well, a Minka Lest novel for the Cadians, And a Black Library art compendium for Warhammer 40,000. Feels like quite a fun book for some collectors perhaps, apparently having 200 pieces of artwork from newer stuff to more classic pieces. Before we move on to all the other reveals and releases, I'd just like to give a quick shout out to today's video sponsor in Tabletop Stronghold. One good option for getting your miniatures from A to B in safety, with a purpose-built magnetic carry case. They've got a sale on for Black Friday at the moment for 30% off their range, and it'll be linked down in the video description. Magnetic carry cases have generally been fairly popular in 40k recently, the idea being that you attach magnets to the bottom of your miniature's bases so they grip onto magnetic sheets, so don't slide around or scrape on each other when they're in transport. Tabletop Stronghold's cases are made of sturdy MDF, making them a little bit heavier than some cases out there, though notably durable and hard wearing, and then they have a bunch of layers for metal sheets to slot in, which you can raise or lower the height of depending on what models you're transporting. They also have an acrylic sheet on the front of them as well, which is quite nice to be able to see your miniatures while in transit. Generally, reviews and feedback that I've seen for them have been pretty good, and they can ship free to a whole bunch of places around the world, though there might be some local VAT or import duties to pay on them if you go outside the USA. In any case, feel free to check them out while they're on sale, linked in the video description, and I'll cycle back to a few options for them at the end of the video if you'd like to know more. For this week's Games Workshop releases, it's a new edition of the Lord of the Rings, the new one that they've decided to do tying in with this War of the Rohirrim film that's going to be coming out in December. The launch box being Rohan vs Wildmen, with a few characters from the upcoming films and some fun terrain pieces in these Rohan houses. The rumoured price I'd seen is £140 or $220, which seems kind of in line with a lot of other edition starter sets. I guess perhaps the terrain increases the price of this one a bit more than it would be if it were just the models. They'll be going up for pre-order on Saturday the 30th of November, with a full release on the 14th of November. Here are a bunch of the characters from the box set, ones that are going to be featuring in the movies, and they come with a mounted and on foot version, so you can choose to field them either way. Here are the Men of Rohan and the Wildmen, both quite fun new plastic miniatures here. As usual with the Lord of the Rings miniatures, their scaling is a little bit smaller than say the equivalent for 40k. Then as well as that, they've got a whole bunch of character releases, including Mr. Helm Hammerhand in the middle, who true to his name doesn't seem to need a sword to fight in battle. All of these ones are out in Forge World resin, which seems to be their way for the releasing smaller volume character miniatures for settings like the Lord of the Rings and Necromunda these days. And there's a few bigger miniatures as well, some hill trolls of Angmar, along with their chieftain on the previous one, and some great eagles in plastic, which I think compared with a bunch of other giant eagle miniatures that Games Workshop have done, they do look rather cool. In any case, if you're looking to pick up the launch box set, or any of the plastic things, feel free to check out the channel's discount retailers around the world on Saturday. They can save anywhere between 10 and 21% off. A few of them have some other perks and bonuses for ordering on Black Friday sort of weekend as well, and there'll be links down in the video description. Otherwise, for model reveals today, we've got yet more for Necromunda. They do seem to have been keeping them coming out rolling consistently on the Monday previews. Last week we had an Abyssal Ferryman Ogrin, and this time we've got a Cadaver Merchant one, a great big meaty Ogrin clad in an apron, a grizzly chain axe in one hand, and a presumably recently deceased Ganger slung over his other shoulder in a body bag. I can't say I'm super clued up on Necromunda game mechanics, but I did find it kind of interesting that you gain some credits for slaying Gangers, and apparently adds you some meat supplies in an Uprising campaign, which I think you can probably guess where they came from. They're sold together with him and a Narca informant, and they're made in Forge World resin, so again, like the ones with the Abyssal Ferrymen, are probably going to be kind of expensive. Another minor reveal that Games Workshop had on the day of the World Champions preview was a rather cool new Celestine statue. This is another one of those ones coming from Weta Workshop, the animations and movie effect type guys who did the Lord of the Rings, and they've done a small series of Warhammer 40k series models now. We had one for Lieutenant Titus and Abaddon, and now we have one for the Living Saint herself. It is kind of curious that these models are some of the most expensive Warhammer models that you can get out there now. They're only a little bit off the most expensive Titans. They do stand at about the same sort of size. They're at 1/6 scale as opposed to the sort of 1/28 scale that Warhammer's normally at, more or less. The Celestine statue looks rather fun. Definitely some similar trappings to a regular 40k model. Swirling parchments and a bunch of doves. On this one she's been joined by a little candle reliquary as well, and some sort of ecclesiastical style buildings. The price on these is pretty crazy, $1,800 plus shipping and any local taxes that you might have to pay, which could be kind of considerable too. I believe they ship out from New Zealand where they're made, and there's only going to be 850 of these made total if they sell them all. These ones are following their line of other statues they've made. As mentioned, there's Abaddon and Lieutenant Titus already, and they also have a few smaller offerings for 40k too. They seem to be keeping on going with different helms for different Space Marine chapters. I believe done in the same polystone and hand painted to order. There's one for a striking scorpion helm as well with some Manda blasters. Here in the UK, we've had a couple of magazines go up to pre-order for Combat Patrol that seem to be only around for a very short time before disappearing completely. Forbidden Planet is one of the more reliable places to pre-order the magazines early, generally with quite good stocks, though it seems it didn't really take them too long to clear out the good issues of the Parasite of Mortrex and the Chaplain on Bike. I believe they went live sometime around sort of Thursday to Friday nightish, and are now already sold out to pre-order. These two were particularly sought after, given that it's basically £13.50, including postage and packaging, for either the Parasite of Mortrex, the Tyrannid character that costs around about £26 or so, or the Chaplain on Bike, who's a big £34, so some of the better discounts versus the box set price here. Not really too surprising that people jumped on them. Subscribers for the magazine will be getting these as well in around about 2 months or so, I believe. And out of the other issues, there's one other one that might be of interest to some people. Issue number 21 is reportedly an Eldari Farseer. That's only from the leaked content so far. I don't think that we've had absolute 100% confirmation on that, which might make people just a little bit more nervous. If it does turn out to be that though, then that could be an interesting deal. Looks like he didn't sell out initially. It is the model that comes in Combat Patrol Eldari though, so maybe quite a lot of collectors out there for Craft Worlds might already have one. I'm sure it could be interesting to some though. I'll leave that links down in the video description. Some of the next most notable ones will likely be a Wraith Lord and Wraith Blades, both of which are supposedly going to be in one issue, though I guess we'll wait and see on that front. Games Workshop drops another teaser for the 40k animation that's coming as part of the Amazon Secret Level gaming anthology. That one's going to be coming out on December the 10th, so really not too long to go now. The idea behind these is they're supposed to be at least fairly short and sweet animations, I guess likely something around about the 10-minute mark or so. And the idea is that this one's supposed to be a bit of a narrative sequel to the Space Marine 2 game, seeing what Titus is getting up to after that. From the teaser shots that we've seen, he's been fighting alongside some Ultramarines Honor Guard looking types, smashing what appears to be Tzeentch cultists, and dragging a mysterious box along behind him as they go about doing their mission. There's a few more interesting teasers, including Titus having destroyed some sort of great big demon type thing, and a bunch of Space Marines looking like they're getting ready to gun down a bunch of bikes with some fancy pistols. But it generally looks like it's going to be good fun. It's made by the people who made Love, Death and Robots, which was generally pretty well received in those little shorts. It's been interesting to see which Christmas Battleforce box sets tends to keep in stock or sell out around the world. Last time I did a news roundup, I mentioned that they'd come back at discount in the USA for people who were looking for them. They're available from Wargame Portal, the channel affiliate discounter in the USA. There'll be links down in the video description below. It looks like since then the Knights box set has followed the Dark Angels in going out of stock. Kind of predictable really, as that was easily the second most popular one. The ones that remain are the Retaliation Cadre for the Tau, the Necrons and the Sisters. Out of these, I'd guess that the next one that will sell out will be the Retaliation Cadre. I think that one will go eventually, just as it's got quite a lot of big desirable suits in it. And it's a pretty useful expansion to an army, even if the discount isn't enormous in it. And it's not really the sort of box that might tempt people to start Tau with it, perhaps. In any case, as ever, for those people who were looking to pick them up, I'd certainly recommend buying at discount if possible. As for these ones in particular, the savings seem kind of marginal if you miss out on the 15% discount versus Games Workshop. For another miniature reveal today, we also had one for the Old World, a rather angry looking lady called Frodala Chainmaker, resplendent with some great big demon horns and a massive flail. She's going to be a new miniature for Chaos in the Old World cast in Forge World resin, and her article also features the Red Gobbo little giveaway thing for this week in a picture of a purple paint pot. That might be of interest to some of you who are looking to enter Games Workshop's weekly giveaway for those combat patrols. Finally, seeing as I didn't talk about them at the time, I thought we'd take a look through the other reveals from the Friday preview show. Everything for Games Workshop's other gaming systems beyond 40k and Heresy. It seems that for the Old World, they've decided to go for the Empire of Man next. Apparently in their narrative at that point, it's fractured and different factions having conflicts between each other. Isn't exactly abnormal. As per normal with this Old World reboot, there's a whole bunch of ancient plastic kits that went out of production that are coming back, along with some classic miniatures remade in metal and some resin things redesigned in Forge World resin. There's a fair bit of fun classic stuff, including this steam tank. I don't believe that they've had any new miniature unveiled for them yet, though given their release pattern it seems kind of likely that one will turn up down the line. For Age of Sigmar, they announced a bunch of greenskin goodness. They've got their Orruk War Clans battle tome coming out, including a new Cruel Boys model. The things that I found most fun were a great big Orky fortification type thing that might have some interest for 40k Orc collectors. That could look quite nice on a battlefield for the Greenskins, plus some physical manifestations of Orky magic. I quite like the Foot of Gork style manifestation if that's what that is. They also showed off an Ironjaw's Big Mob Spearhead box set as well, which might have some interest for certain Orc players in 40k. This one's basically a bunch of Orky elites plus a Mega Boss. I feel like you could press gang the miniatures into service for 40k purposes just by adding a few pistols and things. Maybe if you had a very focused Beast Snagger army, you might be able to find some value here, perhaps using them to represent some knobs or similar. Besides that, for greenskin things in Age of Sigmar, there were a bunch of Wolf Rider type things for Gloomspike Gits. Apparently they're going to come out in this Git Mob box set, a whole bunch of wolves with 2 goblins on the back, and some wolf chariots and a character one. They seem kind of fun miniatures overall. I feel like they often really go into new themes in Age of Sigmar and tend to go rather heavy on them. Looks like if you want a rather wolf-powered speed mob, then you can get one now. Otherwise, for 40k things, I feel like the biggest news is that we've got a whole bunch of rules releases just around the corner. There's going to be an impending balanced data slate, which could easily be this week, although it could be next week or the one after. One of Games Workshop's World Champions FAQs said there'll be releases both in November and December, which kind of implies that this week is possible, though I guess we'll wait and see on that regard. Sounds like this one could be quite a big one. They've already confirmed a fair few really big things for a bunch of factions out there. In particular, I think people are hoping for something fun for Core Codex Space Marines, though in general it's just going to be a big exciting balance pass, shifting a whole bunch of things around. Otherwise, for 40k relevant releases, I guess we're waiting for that Kill Team box with the Ratlings and the Tank Busters. I wouldn't be too surprised if that turns up sometimes before Christmas. Then there's the Deathcore of Kree box set, that'll probably be in January, and then Eldari after that sometime with all the shiny new Phoenix Lords and Aspect Warriors. In December it's going to be Debsy with that Grotzmas calendar with a new detachment for Warhammer 40k every single day. I'll certainly look forward to covering that. And then at the end of it, we'll probably get some new miniature reveals. They tend to show off some fun stuff on Christmas Day. I really wouldn't be too surprised if we see some Emperor's Children then, though I guess another possibility could be something like Imperial Knights or Thousand Sons Automata, unless they do happen to have yet more Eldari or some more Krieg reveals to show us. In any case though, let me know your thoughts as to all the news announcements and model reveals down in the comments. What do you think looks cool or not? Finally, I'll just cycle back to talk about the video sponsor for today in Tabletop Stronghold. As mentioned earlier, magnetic cases for transporting your miniatures around, magnets mounted on the bases of your models and then attached to some durable steel sheets. They're linked in the video description and currently have their Black Friday sale on. Here's a better look at the amount of models that you can fit on each one of those trays on the levels, slotting into those wooden grooves that you can see on the left there, and then you can have anywhere around about 90 25mm base infantry on it, or around 30 Terminators or so. You might not want to load them quite this full, but it demonstrates just how many can fit on if you want to maximise it. And then for the different sizes of box sets, they have the Mag Case Mini. In the sales, that's £65, $70 or €88, though depending on location, and bear in mind that that's exclusive of VAT or sales tax and there might be import duties. It's worth contacting the vendor to be sure about that. In any case, this one's the sort of slightly more skirmish orientated one, though it can still fit in some pretty mighty tanks with that Spartan and Sakarian on the bottom floor there. And they come with a bunch of magnets to attach to the bases of the miniatures to attach them to the trays. Then for the more well-rounded one, this one's the standard mag case, £107, $115 or €128. This one will fit in a whole bunch of medium-sized armies. You can see the height of the thing with the Chaos Knight on the bottom floor there. Plenty of room for some pretty mighty miniatures. I'll put the external and internal dimensions here on the screen. The prices include all the cost of shipping, which is free. Then there's the really big one in the Mag Case XL. Should be able to handle the majority of 2,000 point armies, I suspect there. That one's £185, $200 or €222. And this one's near enough 2 of those previous cases attached together to make one massive construction. You can see it with the acrylic panel on the front there, held on by those clips too, so you can see the models inside. In any case, as ever, a big thank you to them for sponsoring the video. Feel free to check them out, links down in the video description. Those Black Friday sale deals will be on for a few days more. If you've enjoyed the video, then feel free to subscribe to Auspex Tactics. I'll certainly keep the regular 40k videos coming, with new ones out just about every day. Finally, if you have been enjoying all the videos on the channel, I would just like to mention that Auspex Tactics does have a Patreon page as well, and you can find that linked in the video description if you'd like to help support. Channel patrons get a few advantages, including seeing certain videos early, regular votes to see what sort of things happen next on the channel, and automatic entry into the regular prize giveaways with a chance to win some big model kits each month. If any of that sounds good to you, or you'd just like to help support, the link is in the video description. In any case, a massive thank you for listening, and I'll hope to see you guys next time.